China's decision to host the third Trans-Himalayan Forum for International Cooperation in Nyingchi, Tibet, which is in close proximity to Arunachal Pradesh, could indeed further strain the already deteriorating relations between India and China. The geographical proximity of Nyingchi to Arunachal Pradesh adds a layer of sensitivity to the situation. What's noteworthy is that China has invited Pakistan to attend the meeting, which may be seen as a form of soft provocation or a diplomatic maneuver. Now, Pakistan's acting foreign minister, Jalal Abbas Jilani, is expected to participate along with Afghanistan and Mongolia. The participation of these countries, especially Pakistan, could be seen as China's effort to exert its influence in the region and potentially raise concerns for India. The fact that the distance between Nyingchi and Arunachal Pradesh is only 160 kilometers makes the situation even more complex, as it highlights the proximity of the event to a disputed region. Now, this development underscores the complexities of regional geopolitics in South Asia and the broader Himalayan region. So, I'll come back to you. Not just in the Maldives, even in Arunachal Pradesh, China is, needling India. So now there are reports that it is planning a Himalayan meeting near the border, and it has invited Pakistan also. How do you read this development?
Well, it's part of the same narrative, Neha. It's like, in a sense, telling people that all is good. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is just less than 100 kilometers away from the
Right.
Arunachal border, where the exact place, Nyingchi, where they are holding this meeting.
160 kilometers.
160 kilometers is not very far. It's, it's less than the Delhi-Jaipur distance. And what they would actually be doing in this thing is to say that they are so close to Arunachal Pradesh, and I wouldn't be surprised if there are statements emanating from the Chinese government at that time to suggest that they once again, they're going to stake claim to Arunachal Pradesh, which they don't recognize as part of India. They call it Southern Tibet for some reason, but this is overall is part of their, needling of India along the borders. They use hard power to do it through troop mobilization, and this is a soft power needling along the line of actual control, or the McMahon line.
Right. Well, sir, how does the presence of Pakistan in the Trans-Himalayan meeting really, complicate India's security environment?
Well, I don't see any direct security linkage to Pakistan's presence so close to Arunachal Pradesh, but it's only the thing of normalizing the fact that for the Chinese that they're free to call whoever they want and host whoever they want, so close to the border with so close to the border with India, and that this is exactly what they're doing. Like I said, this is soft power needling. They're using a cultural meeting, a diplomatic event to send out a message to say that, look, Pakistan can come here so close to the Arunachal Pradesh, and by the way, we don't recognize Arunachal Pradesh. That is essentially the statement that's going to come out of there, and Pakistan, as you know, has a collusive relationship with China, and
or with anyone which even remotely goes against India.
That's right. So particularly China and Pakistan have been very close. They're literally
Right.
joined at the hip when it comes to needling India. So this is no surprise at all. So this is soft power needling.
Right. Sir, also I want to understand from you what really explains this repeated provocation from China.
Well, China wants to signal that it is the only power in Asia. It's the only dominant power in Asia, and it does not want India to rise to becoming a contender to China. There is no China plus one according to them. It's only China, and it's just like there can't be two lions in one forest is one parable that they are fond of quoting. So they're saying that, look, we are the only game in town, and India doesn't have a chance, and at every given opportunity, they will try and show us down, either militarily or diplomatically. So this is part of that game, so that they have always feared the rise of an India, especially an India that is closely aligned to the Western powers like the US and the other Quad countries. Right. And this is one reason that they have actually been so close to Pakistan over 50 years now, and they have even transferred nuclear weapons and missiles to Pakistan. It's unprecedented. No other country in the history of the world has done this, transfer not only blueprints but also tested nuclear devices for another country, and that's how close the Pakistanis are to the Chinese.
Right. Well, given your deep understanding of this topic, I would like to know from you, sir, that what is the true intention of the Chinese when it comes to India? You know, they time and again say that they want to develop the relations with India. There have been several level of, commander level talks that have taken place. Both the leaders of the countries have also met. But, you know, we keep seeing these, repeated provocations from the Chinese. So what is the true intention of China?
The true intention has been what it has been for over 50 or 60 years, which is to ensure that India is firewalled into South Asia, that it never rises to a level that it can challenge China, and exactly the reason why they fear South Korea and Japan on their eastern flank. So on the eastern flank, they've got North Korea. They've propped up North Korea for over half a century. They've given them weaponry, know-how, missile tech and all that, so that they firewall South Korea and Japan. They're always stuck in East Asia and they're unable to rise. Of course, the Japanese and South Koreans are both economic powers, but not as militarily strong as the Chinese and the North Koreans. And in South Asia or the Indian subcontinent, they have Pakistan to do their dirty work for them. And this is exactly what has happened over the last 50 or 60 years. It began in the mid-60s when post the Indo-China border war, which we're observing the 61st anniversary of this month, when this collusive relationship between China and Pakistan came about, and nuclear weapons is one aspect of it. They wanted India and Pakistan to be locked in conflict in South Asia so that India would never break free and rise to challenge China. So this is their goal, to ensure that all the so-called barbarians at the gates are always fighting amongst themselves, and none of them kind of it becomes militarily and economically strong to challenge China. This is a game that they've been playing for hundreds of years.
Right. Well, finally, I'm assuming all of this, of course, the Indian government is well aware of all of these developments. Why do we repeatedly, why do we continue to engage with the China despite knowing that what the end result is going to be?
Well, it's just like this, that China carried out one of the biggest deceptions in the world, again, in the last 50 years, when they broke away from the Soviet Union and they aligned closer to the United States in exchange for a whole lot of technology and for access to the US markets. And based on that, they crafted a narrative which said something to this effect, that as China would grow and become integrated into the Western capitalism, it would actually become more free and democracy would take root. That's one of the biggest misconceptions of the 20th century. China has actually become more authoritarian today than it was, say, 20 or 30 years back under Xi Jinping. And this is the kind of narrative that I think we also fell for a few decades ago, when we believed that if India and China did a lot of business together, we could be friends and we could live happily ever after. And as incidents in Ladakh showed us just 3 years back, that was sadly not the case. That China proved that you could have $100 billion trade relationship per year, but you could still deploy troops against each other, exactly like what they've done in Ladakh. And this is what we've been trying to tell them over the last 3 years, that it cannot be business as usual. I think we have finally woken up, and we've seen through the Chinese deceit in the last 3 or 4 years. Better late than never.
But are we ready to learn our lessons, is the question.
I think we have, to an extent, learnt our lessons. The fact that when China bared its fangs at us, we realized that, look, this whole thing of trade normalizing ties between India and China, we always knew there would be a point when China would want to assert itself, and a lot of very wise people on our side saw it happening, because the entire Chinese military mobilization and modernization was aimed at this, to control its neighbors in the near abroad. And that's exactly what's happened in 2020, when China decided to kind of say that enough is enough. Now we're going to teach India a lesson, and that lesson fortunately was met with resolve and force on our side, and that standoff continues as we continue to tell the Chinese that we cannot be business as usual.